Hello, and welcome to Uncut with Gina and Sukhdev. I'd like to introduce to you Sukhdev, who's going to be my co-coach, and Jack Reynolds, who's our guest today. Before we get started, Sukhdev, would you like to describe who you are and what you do?
Yes, my name is Sukhdev Krishan. I am creator and founder of Creative Discovery Group. We're the #1 platform around the world for coaches and consultants, and we're happy to be here and see what happens with Jack on our show.
And I'm Gina Gardner. My company is Genuinely You. My work is all around personal empowerment and transformational leadership. And we're very, very pleased to welcome Jack Reynolds with us today. Jack, thank you for joining us. What would you like to focus on today?
Today, I would like to focus on what it means to be an enlightened leader, because I am actually stepping into a role now at a certain company where I need to be an enlightened leader, because we're hoping to recruit people who have discovered sort of a purity within themselves to be able to enter business together. So yeah, so I would really just like to learn more about what it means to be an enlightened leader.
Okay, so let me ask you, what does enlightened mean to you?
Boy, I've been on sort of an unusual quest for a 29-year-old man in America. I've been kind of pursuing enlightenment on my own for the past few years. I know that to the enlightened, that'll sound crazy because you don't find anything, but to me, it really just means being who you really are. It means existing in a space of no threat and just pure presence. You're just purely yourself.
Okay. And that's a really good starting point for enlightened leadership. I want you to think about, when you think about great leaders, what are the attributes that you think a great leader has?
I would say, I imagine that most great leaders have suffered in their life, because in my life, I learned the greatest lessons after I've experienced great pain, and then was honest about my state of mind I was in when I experienced that pain. And I sometimes have to learn things about myself that often I don't want to see. But there's so much growth in that I imagine most great leaders have suffered, done the internal work to have seen it, and then realized sort of through that experience, oh wait, I never really wanted to hurt anyone, including myself. So it's like they come back out as, I think it's the good king kind of thing. You come out of that internal evolution and become the good king. So I think that sort of paired with strength, real power, and discipline. And then, so really just discipline, power, and unconditional love, I think would create a great leader. And I could be wrong.
So it's quite interesting, I think, because I could, and Christian could, Sukhdev could just give you a whole load of information. But actually, I think that what would be more valuable, and very happy to give you that information, but what's more valuable in a sense is to really explore who you are as a leader, okay, and where you are in your evolution, sure, and what would be the next step for you.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested that there's a huge power in language. Every word has energy behind it.
Sure.
And unpicking what you mean by those words is vital, because we use these words at high level, but the three of us and everybody who's listening to this may have a different blueprint for what that word actually represents and means.
Sure.
So you use the word strength, you were unconditional love, and discipline were the three words that you used.
Right.
When you're talking about strength, what do you actually mean? What behaviors would you use to exemplify strength in the context of an enlightened leader?
I guess the kind of, man, sometimes it's ineffable what I'm trying to pull out of myself. Like for me, for example, if I may just reference myself in my personal story, I played college football. And when I was in college, I was what they call an offensive lineman. I was sort of the protector of all the skinny guys. I was 310 pounds.
Goodness me.
I graduated college, a very, very big guy. And I was captain of the team, so I've always been in these leadership roles, but I certainly was never enlightened. Oh my goodness. But one thing that I did after I graduated was I established fantastic discipline, because I identified that in order for me to feel my best, I care about aesthetics. I really do love beauty, is something that I truly care about. And so I wanted to lose a lot of weight. I wanted to be a handsome person. So every day for the next year, I would wake up at 6 a.m. and do about 90 minutes of cardiovascular training, which I hadn't done ever before. And I paired that with insane dieting, and I ended up losing 100 pounds in a year. Since that experience, there's a sort of discipline in me that I identify as strength. So now whenever I do anything, and now what I'm taking on is this journey of becoming enlightened, of becoming who I truly am, so that I can give back my full essence to the world. Because I established that discipline, I now know, at least physically, I can do anything. I can wake up and I can do anything because I did that. And that was a pain. So it's almost like, to me, true strength is discipline, which discipline's fantastic, because in my life, discipline is also applied to like every facet of my existence. When someone utilizes word to harm me, they sticks and stones. I'm so disciplined that I know that doesn't have to harm me. I know my own space versus your space, because I've been able to establish this discipline. So to me, hopefully that makes sense to you, but that's what strength would be to me.
Now, isn't it interesting? Because as I've asked you to share your blueprint of those words, one of the things that you're modeling is so powerfully how everybody has a different blueprint for the words that we use, and actually sharing what people mean by those words. The true value of those words becomes when they are shared, when you're a leader.
Right.
Now, I'd like to unpick those, because I think under the umbrella of what you call strength and the umbrella of what you call discipline, I would describe them in very different ways. And I'm sure Sukhdev would have his version too. Because when you talk about strength and discipline, you almost interchange them. You know, strength gives you the discipline and discipline gives you strength. Yeah. But and there was quite the example you gave was very much based on physicality.
Sure. Yeah, very much.
But there'll be many leaders who are enlightened leaders for whom their strength is nothing about physicality.
Sure.
And everything about their approach, their thinking, the way in which they are prepared to be vulnerable, for example. And I think one of the things that it's important to recognize as an enlightened leader is that everybody has their own language, but the leader is the person who actually sets the language out in a way that people can understand and take ownership of.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So there's three of us here. I'm talking apples. You're talking oranges. Sukhdev is talking pears. They're all fruit, and we're using the same words, but they're vastly different pieces of fruit. Okay? But the enlightened leader has the capacity to share their message in a way that is meaningful for everybody.
I love that.
Okay?
Yeah.
When you talk about discipline, for many people, discipline will be something that they would want to avoid because it has negative connotations. Discipline is in line with being disciplined. And that will take them back to being at home or being at school where they did something wrong and somebody was very judgmental. So with an enlightened leader, if you're talking about working with other people, what do you think is the approach that would most enable them to develop and grow, to understand what is expected, but what's the culture that you would choose to use to help them recognize the power of discipline in the context that you're using it?
Well, wow, I appreciate that question greatly, because it affects the way that I think, and it puts me in a new space of thinking, which is really healthy for me. I grew up with what I call a tyrannical father, someone whom I love deeply, but who I've really had to look at how he raised us and the tone which he used at times. Because although the wordage, the rules he had that he would try to impart on us were good and wholesome, the tone he utilized implied a disconnection within himself. And we ended up taking on that disconnection. And I've had to go on this quest of figuring out who I really am, honestly, because of it. So I'm always thinking about tone and words, and how, you know, you can really get through to someone optimally, like a true diplomat. And hearing you ask the question the way you did is so helpful for me. I think, honestly, I think the way for me to be optimally diplomatic and to say things in a way that doesn't threaten anyone through misunderstanding or through whatever would be to ask questions, almost like guiding questions would be, I think, what, because I've been that captain on a football team who used the wrong tone, who yelled at the wrong time, who brought the wrong energy behind his words at the wrong time. And I've noticed that it doesn't connect with people.
It's interesting again, because I know I keep on about the language, but you talk about being diplomatic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you take I'm not sure what the core meaning of diplomatic is, but you know, my version is that you will say things that can be quite challenging, but you'll say them in a way which is palatable for the person to take on board. Now, interestingly, your third word was unconditional love. And many people, well, that's two words, but you know what I mean, I'm joining one thing, that many people think about unconditional love being pink and fluffy. You know, if you love somebody unconditionally, you let them get away with murder, that, you know, that, okay, that's not my interpretation of it. And it's interesting how these things interconnect, because I think if you love somebody unconditionally and they know that, then you can have very high expectations of them, and you can actually say to somebody in no uncertain terms, that's not good enough. I expect better of you. Okay. But the interesting thing is that rather than criticize the person, you're criticizing the behavior. And you're saying, you're too good for that. That is not what I expect. Jack, that really isn't your best.
Wow.
You're letting yourself down because I know you can do better, rather than, Jack, that's a load of rubbish, and what do you think you're doing that for? Can you see how in some ways people would say that was not diplomatic to say, Jack, that's not good enough?
Yeah.
But if it comes from a place where people recognize it's unconditional love, and because of that, I've got high expectations of you, then the language that you use, the culture that you create becomes very different. So the unconditional love is really important, but that unconditional love, I would suggest, from enlightened leadership is about, I love and appreciate who I am. I love and appreciate who you are, and I expect great things from both of us.
Certainly, yeah.
I'll be the best me I can be, but I expect you to be the best you can be, and I won't settle for second best.
Wow.
But you can only do that if you've established the trust, the respect, the integrity, the fairness. Yeah?
Yeah.
No room for ego. You leave that at home under your pillow with your pajamas.
Yeah.
Absolutely no room for I'm the best and, you know, you're subordinate. This is about together we're going to be the best version of us that we can be.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, totally. Thank you for saying all of that.
So let's go back to where you are as a leader, because however good you are, however experienced you are, this is a learning journey which is never finished. So if I said to you, what sort of leader do you want to be? What's your goal in terms of enlightenment as a leader? What's the impact? And I talk about people having a living legacy. So every word you speak or not, the way in which you say it, whether you say it at all, every action you take or not, leaves a living legacy, or even legacy. It leaves a legacy. It leaves an energy, doesn't it?
Certainly.
It's an energy transfer between you and another, or you and lots of others.
Yeah.
And it leaves that I was going to say shadow, but that's got other content. It leaves that that impact. What's the impact that you want to have with the people who work for you?
Man. The truth is, when you ask me that question, I understand ego enough to the point where when you ask, I finally let it go, so that I can answer it from in sort of like a lack of an egoic place. I think ultimately the kind of leader that I want to be is someone who, when other people walk in the room and they hear me speak, they understand they understand why I possess this conviction in my tone. They know that Jack has gone through it and he has championed himself. They can feel the strength in me. They know that things are okay just because they are teamed up with me. They have my oversight. They know that they can turn to me whenever they need to. They know that I have an aura of an energy that sort of aligns the misaligned, ultimately. And I know that's grand, but really that's the truth.
And thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. But my challenge to you is, if you're going to lead in an enlightened way, and that your role is to align the misaligned, just be mindful of, you can't do this for people. All you can do is create the space and the environment for them to do it for themselves. Otherwise, you keep them stuck as being a victim, and you put yourself in a role of something, you're a fixer.
Right. Yeah.
And actually, enlightened leaders don't look to fix people. They look to help people recognize their own power and step into their own power. And recognize that they're not broken.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think in my answer, there's subconsciously, I'm aware of that, because really what I'm trying to get out is like, what I really want to be as a leader is outside of the ego. I just want my presence to be something that opens up a space in people. Ultimately, I know I need to even drop that intent, because it implies that I'm here to change people. And for me to be at my most optimal, turned on, I have to have dropped that concept. I have to be immersed in the present.
Let me just twist the perception slightly.
Please, yeah.
So that it's about holding the space, all right? That you just hold the space for people to come into, and they know it's safe and non-judgmental, that it's loving, but that's different to giving it to people.
Oh my goodness, yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it switches the whole aim of it, or the whole paradigm behind all of it.
That switches. The outcome is that you want the best for other people. But the one there's two, well, there's probably more, but the two inherent dangers that I see is it's so easy that either that can switch into ego, or other people will perceive it as ego. And the second is that while you're fixing people, they're not stepping into their power. And that keeps them as subordinate to you, rather than becoming collaborative with you.
Wow.
Yeah. And enlightened leaders want
collaboration,
Yeah. Now, of course, there are going to be people who, to start with, need you to hold their hand and
Sure.
to help them recognize that this is a safe space. But when you, as an enlightened leader, really recognize the potential in somebody else, part of that is just holding the mirror and saying, Jack, you have tremendous potential. You might not believe it at the moment, but actually I can see it in you. And so I want to share with you and give you an opportunity. Because for me, and I'm only giving you my version, and I'm going to hand over to Sukhdev as soon as I finish this little bit. For me, that's one of the most rewarding parts of being an enlightened leader, is seeing the potential in other people.
Yeah.
And giving them, very often, having more faith in them than they have in themselves.
Yeah.
And opening the space up when I'm watching them move from this little grubby caterpillar that's been crawling on the ground to this amazing butterfly that can fly, and, you know, and in doing that, then being prepared to let them fly and not hold on to them, because they're going to be bigger and better and different to me. That for me is a huge pleasure.
Yeah.
But it's very easy, from the perception of you've got to do it for them, that you keep them limited by you.
It's so true. This is can I share the insight that this is leading me to?
Yeah, absolutely.
When I'm because you guys are veterans at this, you can probably feel the youth in me stepping into a new position where I'm at a point in my life where I really want to do it right. And I don't want to hurt people on any level too. And I'm becoming very spiritual, and enlightened leadership really is calling me, but there's still this sort of youthful, I haven't totally seen it yet, but hearing you say that, shifting my thought stream, it's like the mistake I keep making is like, I do truly want to help people. So I am taking on this sort of, I'm going to change you energy, when in reality, for me to be the enlightened leader that I know I want to be and can be, I have to be so authentic and present that I meet people where they are. That it's not me here to come change you with what I've done and the lessons I've learned. It's really, boom, I've died before I died in order to truly live as this enlightened leader. So my ego, I see it now. I take a step back and I meet you where you are. That's what you're showing me with what you're saying, really, which is huge for me.
That's brilliant. I'm going to hand over to Sukhdev, and I'll come back to you later on.
Please.
So Sukhdev, over to you.
Yeah, so that's awesome, Jack. Everything I've heard so far, that sounds really great. One thing I want to ask is, I know who you want to be and what you want to do, but why do you want to do it?
You guys got a minute, I can tell you. I'm very good at telling my story at this point, but and I enjoy telling it. It's healthy for me to tell, but I come from a type A family. My father is one of the most driven people I've ever met in my life. My mother is a naive, selfless angel. They both met at Princeton University. My dad was captain of the football team. She was just there because she's brilliant. They got married. They had us 4 boys. And my dad went off to make a ton of money, being a lawyer, being very successful. And one thing my dad imparted on us were very strict rules, and always being a good person, be a good man. And, like, never disrespect women. So I have these like huge values, but there was something missing in my father and how he led. He was so hungry to teach us things that it was forceful. And as I've grown up and I've been in relationships with, friends and different women and things like that, I've realized that I carried this tendency to be hard on people, to be, given my research at this point, tyrannical. I know that I have power. I know that I'm right. So I'm going to get it done. And you're going to just see that I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to get us there. But it took a woman about 4 years ago, a woman I really loved at the time, to stop and say, Jack, I know you have big power. I know you're smart, but I feel like you don't even see me sometimes. that was what shifted me in that moment to a realization that something was missing in me. And what was missing was unconditional love. I didn't truly love myself. You know, I'd learned from my father, who the reason he'd gone and made so much money and been so forceful with us in learning lessons is because he was constantly feeling lack. He wasn't feeling true fulfillment and unconditional love in him, because then the energy and intent and tone behind everything he would have done would have been totally different. It wouldn't have been so brutal. So at 30 years old, I have a son, and I love people. I love women, and I've been in enough bad relationships to where I have consciously chosen to not hurt anyone for the rest of my life outside myself. I refuse. So you know, that few years ago, when that woman told me, Jack, I feel like you can't see me, she broke up with me soon after, and then I quit my job and moved from New York City, this type A life that I was pursuing, to Montana, the middle of nowhere. And I almost entered this like hermited, quiet 3 years of my life, man, where like I thought I was losing my mind because I was shifting, my perception was shifting so powerfully. I was embracing ego death. I didn't want to hurt anyone, and so I sort of radically took on ego death. But anyway, here I am now, and I've experienced that whole time of my life, and I've come full circle, and you know, I'm still here, and I'm realizing that through that darkness and through those hard times, and being willing to look at the truth of myself, I've championed myself, and I've created something really special in myself, a powerful energy, you know, something that sees truth in the world and provides me clarity, and ultimately, when I'm in this space, I just want to give back. So what I identified in my past was tyrannical energy, which gave me power, but ultimately led me down a path that I don't agree with. And so I'm shifting from that to now what I call the good king, the philosopher king, is how it feels for me. And so really, there's nothing else for me. I want to give back to the world, and the way that I feel it in my body is by becoming a leader, but not the tyrannical leader that this world knows so well.
So have you forgiven yourself, and now do you love yourself now?
I'm in it, you know. I have days where, yeah, oh my God, I realize I just let it all go. All the things that I picked up in this life that have been blocking that sunshine inside me, that light, that love, that connection, it falls away. Because I really have, my intent has been to find this enlightened leader on the inside, to really let go. So there are days, but then I shift out of it the next day, you know, and I'm back into that little war with myself, but I can feel it dissipating the more wise I become.
So what do you think is the biggest challenge at the moment for you, and for you as a person, like you?
Me, individually.
Yeah.
I fear, which is for most of us. It's just really just fear. Like, I have a child now, and he was unexpected, but what a blessing. Oh my goodness. And I have this fantastic partner whom I'm with. But I have to provide now, and I've been on this sort of lone wolf journey where, like, I did kind of say screw the world for these 3 or 4 years. Like, I don't care about money, I don't care about what everyone is telling me is important. I have to figure out this internal Jack. And so now I'm coming back into the world, and like, I don't have money, I'm not financially secure, at least to my standards. And that sort of fear affects me in a way that it brings back these old guards and this old perception and this old thinking, that old ego.
What do you think you're afraid of exactly? Like, if you had to like pinpoint something, one thing.
Being a fraud.
So have you been looked at as a fraud in the past?
By myself.
So why did you look at yourself that way? What made you do that?
I think I had an unusual upbringing, given who my father is. It's just like extreme when it comes to leading and taking charge. And so I always have had this ideal in my mind when it comes to how I'm supposed to be in control of things. And I don't feel in control. And instead of going down that path of like being the tyrant and channeling that power and making tons of money and finding that security, I've taken the opposite route, which is really like letting go completely of needing the security and then finding like a real security in myself instead of finding it out in the world like everyone else. But like I kind of want both now, so I'm trying to bring both of those worlds together, and it's still a little shaky, if that makes sense.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because throughout your conversation this evening, what's tended to happen, and this is just, I'm going to give you, I call it a gut dump, all right? This is my sense take, and it may resonate, but it may not, that things are polarized. It's either total ego or it's total surrender. It's either tyrannical or it's golden good. It's either security or it's complete. It's either control or it's no control.
You know, and I feel it nearing like a headway. And to give you even more information, I grew up playing piano in Carnegie Hall. I was one of these young children with a gift, but I also grew up to be this professional bodybuilder working for Nike and Under Armour. So I've always had this beauty in me. Like I can, that sounds like ego, but I promise it's not. I've always had this beautiful energy in me, man, that I can get to when I let go, even as a child. And then I would stand up from the piano as a kid and enter the same dense, tyrannical energy of my family in the house. I always knew, even at 5 years old, something was off, given that shift in those moments. But yeah, like I've always identified as this like piano playing tough guy, bodybuilder. So it's like this tyrannical power urge, rage is what I bring to the bodybuilding life. And then this like sort of serene, gentle, selfless beauty. And so I have these two energies that I'm trying to sort of become one so that I can have the power and the serenity, which is really to me like the enlightenment and the leadership.
I'm going to suggest a couple of different approaches. Power is not the same as tyranny. Power is being able to take a step back. It's being able to see beyond. It's being able to say to somebody else, you're okay. Your dad had a style of fathership, no doubt, based on his own childhood. Either he wanted something very different for you, and so he went at it, and there's no blueprint for parenthood. His vehicle to do it was not great, but I suspect that his motive was a pure one. You've alluded to that. On the other hand, you talk about beauty and serenity as if the two things are mutually exclusive. But the real power is in not trying to be this or trying to be that. You are, by the very nature of the beast, as all of us are, is you are the combination of those two things. And I think you may find it easier if you stop trying so hard to be this this entity which is trying so hard to not be this and not be that, rather than I'm going to take the best of that and I'll take the best of that and I'll combine those and I'll make a judgment moment by moment, not in terms of the quality, the value of power, the value of serenity and creativity, but I'm going to choose the right vehicle. And I can choose a vehicle that's all about power, that is not about being tyrannical. I can do it in my own way. And I'm going to hand over to Sukhdev again. But the other thing you talked about, I am determined never to hurt anybody else. Well, actually, the only thing you can do is to be conscious about not intending to hurt other people.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
But inevitably, remember that it's not all about you, my love. That sometimes you will inadvertently hurt other people because of their baggage. Your intent might be great, but your vehicle may be something that steamrollers them because they're not ready or because
It
of
does,
their
Gina,
baggage.
it does. I
Okay.
noticed that it does. Oh
So
man.
I think that the impression that I'm getting is I'm trying really, really, really hard to be enlightened. Yeah.
I mean, it's like a bodybuilder sitting down to meditate, you know? It's
And I would say to you, just give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Stop trying so hard.
Yeah.
Just learn to be.
Yeah.
And to ask yourself moment by moment,
Yeah.
does this feel right? Am I being my best self in this?
Yeah.
And if you are, great. And if you're not, what do I need to learn? What do I need to do differently?
I appreciate that so much. That's the kind of thing that helps me so much, because really I'm coming from the purest intentions. Like
That's
I saw,
comes over very, very strong.
yeah, I saw something missing in the world, and I can't fathom not trying to give it back at this point. And so I do take on this sort of like, please God, let me get this done. It's the world needs it. The world needs some help, but that's ultimately paradoxical. It's only going to, it's just not going to break me.
We've done another interview today, and the same theme has come up. You're a human being.
Yeah.
What are human doing?
Yeah.
So, Sukhdev, I'm going to hand back to you.
Thank you.
So Jack, when you were playing piano, how old were you when you were playing piano?
I first sat down to play the piano when I was 5 at like an uncle's house, and I had played something my parents were listening to in the car. I just played it by ear, and that's when they said, "Oh, maybe he has a talent."
Yeah, and then you started playing these shows, and you're performing in halls and things like that.
Yes,
Was
sir.
that you wanted to do, or was that something that your parents wanted you to do, or?
It was cool that they that I would get so much attention for it as a kid. I just loved playing music. Really, I would get pretty nervous in those environments, and funnily, it's pretty funny that it wasn't until high school that I really started like making mistakes in those environments. It's like as I started aging, the anxiety really started kicking in. But when I was a kid, it was really just, oh, mom and dad want me to play this song in front of this group of people. Let's do it. And I would be great. And it was awesome.
Okay, so you really enjoyed it. It wasn't like they were like being like, hey,
No, it was, yeah, no, I see what you're, no, it wasn't like a, you're going to do this kind of thing.
okay,
Going
that's
to
good.
practice was, but performing when I knew I was going to get some attention and some love for it. No.
Yeah. And then bodybuilding.
Yeah.
When you were bodybuilding, was it something that you wanted to do, or was it for a show? Like, was it because you thought it's something you should be doing and to be a man?
I felt bodybuilding was certainly the origin of it was superficial, and I just wanted to be attractive. And it's not until about 4 years down the line that I started to switch that perception and was like, wait, I just want to be healthy.
Okay. So the things you were doing, you know, from the things you shared with, with the piano and bodybuilding, you're doing them for the right reason. It was like making you feel good, and it's something you wanted to do, right?
Power.
Yeah. So, like, if somebody was forcing that on you and you felt like you had to put on a show, and then because you weren't being true to yourself, I could see that you might be looked at as a fraud or something because you weren't being truthful to yourself. But because it was things that you wanted to do, it obviously doesn't work out that way. So, like, I want to know why you would feel like, when this is something that you want to do as a leader and build a company and build a future for yourself, why are you so hard on yourself?
I think that that's just sort of a pattern that I learned from my father when it comes to just getting things done. Like my dad, who got so many things done, he made so much money. He was like, everyone would always tell us how attractive he was. Like, he came in the room, everyone gives him their power. Like, everyone, he just has that presence to him.
Is he happy?
Is he happy? No. He just built a $5 million shore house, and he rarely smiles, you know? So that's also why, like, I personally have struggled with career, just because, of course, if your father goes on to live a path like that, it's like, something's up here, man. The whole world tells you that's the way to be, but I don't see it at home. But like, even when it comes to like, the truth is, even when it comes to like working on a car, for example, it was my mom who would do it. Because if dad went out to go do it, the tools, he would just use rage. So he would end up just breaking things even more. So like anything delicate, he was just, grrr. So like that has always been the way that I've come at things. So it's really been big for me to start taking steps back, be like, find meditation, slow down, be present, really look at things with clarity. But really, I just have this false, I know it's a false expectation that I hold on myself to be a certain way. You know, I feel like I need to be great. If I'm going to do anything, it has to be the best of it. You know, like with bodybuilding, I was only going to bodybuild if I knew that I was going to take it to the most extreme degree. With enlightenment, the thought experiments that I've been doing for myself to get myself to a place of like almost demanding that I let go. Just the thought of experiments I would do just are like so extreme and different than the average person. Imagining loved ones passing away and having to bring myself to that energetic place and letting go and finding just a totally different space of existence. Like, I don't know. I just feel like maybe I have expectations that most people do not carry in this world, which causes me to act a certain way when it comes to getting things done.
Yeah, I think what I hear, what I get out of this is, in some way, you're in a competition with your father.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's then that's okay, and it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's like what level and how far, like you have to sort of like build a bridge from in that scenario in your life.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's, maybe this will even give you guys some more context. I have 3 brothers, all of whom suffered at least 1 year of depression. All 3 of them went to Princeton University. I got into Princeton, didn't choose it because I didn't want to be like everybody else. Anyway, they got into Princeton and they all took a year off from their whole, during their 4-year career. Each one of them took a whole year off at some point due to depression. So yeah, there's like this sort of disconnect in all of my brothers too. I forget where I was going to go with that thought. But yeah, okay, no. It's definitely, it's a competition with my father that he's not even really aware of. But what I was getting at was, one of my brothers was wicked depressed, and I had to pick him up from Princeton because he was taking the year off at that point. And I picked him up, and I was like, Will, imagine we never had a father. I was like, just do this thought experiment with me for just a second. Imagine we didn't have dad. And I could cry just saying that because, Jesus, I don't want to think that way. Come on.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to put yourself in extreme thought experiments to be able to see the potential that exists beyond where you currently are. And so by doing that, he listened to me and he did it. And we both looked at each other like, what is that? Why is it that when I imagine my dad's not here, I feel freedom? Why is it that I feel a relationship with myself, a different space in here just by the fact that he's not around? And it's like it's like I created this hiding in myself because we were just so scared of him growing up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can go
I
on
think
and on and on.
that's where we're going now. See, now we're getting into the deep stuff. I think it's important. Your dad's still here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it is so important for you and your brothers. You know, I'm not going to bring your brothers into this, but I think you could share it with them, to have a real talk. We're getting into this enlightenment stuff right now. If you want to have a real talk with him, because you never know what can happen tomorrow. And if you don't get that chance, yeah, you could still try and you can deal with it, of course. But it's like, you know, the thought experiment, if your dad wasn't here and you didn't get that chance to talk to him, you do it for yourself. Your brothers can do it if they like. But it's so important to to communicate and be honest, because honesty will set you free.
It's so true. Yeah. There's a tendency in our family to hide from the truth. We don't talk about our problem.
But you can see why.
Yeah. And once you do it, like, it's gonna be hard. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy. I had to do this with my dad. My dad passed away from, I don't want to really get into my story because this isn't about me, but my dad passed away from cancer. But I knew, because of the way I was brought up, and we never said I love you. We never talked about anything like that. And like, I knew he loved me, you know, I'm his kid, but I knew that I had to speak with him and have my moment to just let it all out, because if I didn't, and then I'd be like, oh man, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I do that? What was I so afraid of? And I had that moment, and I was like crying and all this stuff. And first, so many times my voice would get up to my throat.
Yeah.
Nothing would come out. And try again, nothing would come out. And then one day I sat in front of him and you know, just cried it out to him, and he knew exactly like how I felt, and it was like probably the most beautiful moment I ever had with him. And it's gonna be so tough, I'm telling you right now, but it's gonna be so good for you and him. And I think that's probably the key for you to move forward.
It's interesting though, and I almost wish that I could have y'all just briefly, I wish you guys could become spirits and just go spend an hour around my father to get a better idea of who he is.
Don't need to.
Yeah, I know you guys know what you're doing.
Can I ask you, what was your father's upbringing like?
A very important question. He grew up with so my pop-up is this bigger than life character, and everybody loved him in the same way that my dad has wanted to be loved and idoled. My dad self-references himself as the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Okay, that gives you an idea of what he wants to be, how he wants to be seen. That was my pop-up. He was seen that way. My pop-up married his wife, my Nana, her last name was McDonald. He referred to her as Mac. She was beautiful, but he always treated her like woman, not an equal woman. That got passed down to my father too. But my father was the youngest of 9. So by the time he was born, my pop-pop was already in his late 40s, and so was his wife, and they decided, we're ready to move on from life though. We didn't really mean to have this 9th kid, so we're gonna retire, move from New Jersey to Florida. So they retired and moved down to Florida, and then my dad's oldest sister, my Aunt Patty, who's a saint, raised my father. My father was basically raised without parents. Ultimately, he doesn't even understand unconditional love. It's true, he really doesn't understand it at times.
How could he?
Exactly. How could he? I mean, I've had moments where I hate my father. I hate him. But then I fall to my knees because my God lets me for a minute experience grace, and I see the truth of his childhood, and I see the truth objectively of why he became what he did. And then I see the whole world doing this. How can you be upset with anyone once you see the truth of their experience, where they lack?
What do you think is at the very heart of all of his behavior? Because having not met him, I'd lay $1 million that I can tell you what's at the heart of his behavior.
He just wants to be loved.
And if you go to him and you use a neutral voice and a neutral body language, and you say to him, Dad, I need to talk to you, and I need you to hear me. I need you to know before I say anything else, I love you unconditionally. I don't always like you, and I certainly don't like the way in which you treat other people, but I need you to know I love you unconditionally.
Yeah.
Because what he needs more than anything else is to know that he is loved. because he doesn't love himself. He doesn't think he is of any value if it isn't for money and for reputation and for being seen as the goat. And the reason he needs that externally is because inside he's the little boy that was given away because his parents couldn't be bothered. They wanted to go off and be retired. He was the child who felt, I'm of no account. And inside that grown up, in his £5 million shore house, is that small boy who feels abandoned, rejected, and unloved. And all of the rest is bravado and crap in order to try and make himself feel better. And it never will, because he's still trapped in that emotional body of that little boy.
It is so unbelievable to see the truth of this and to really feel it, to bring it into my body. That's where the shift happens.
But you have the capacity not only to heal yourself, and it's not your responsibility to heal him, but you have the opportunity to provide the vehicle for him to start healing himself and for your brothers to heal themselves. Not your responsibility, and bearing in mind where we've talked on this session, all right, it's not for you to go and fix them, but what you could do is to go and hold the space, and if they're prepared to step into it, that they can start to heal too. That's what being an enlightened leader is all about.
Oh my goodness gracious. And I know that I know that this is my destiny, because to see what I've seen, there's no going back once you see these objective truths. I know this is what I want. And hearing you say that, it brings me back to one quick example or moment with my father, which was, he's always sent us on these lavish vacations. We tend to go on these vacations with him, and they're not fun because he's always in a bad mood, but whatever. We flew home from one of these vacations, and it was a beautiful vacation in Lake Powell, Utah. And we get in the car and we're driving home while the shore house, the $5 million shore house that you mentioned, was being built. And I think it had just been finished actually while we were gone. So we were excited to see it. My dad was so excited to show it off to friends and family to come visit. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I had said, well, Dad, I'm not gonna hang around the house tomorrow. I just spent 10 days away from my girlfriend. I love her. I want to go see her. So I'm not going to be here tomorrow. And he loses it, almost pulls the car over on the highway, screams at the top of his lungs. Well, then why the hell am I even building this damn shore house? Which to me, it didn't make any sense at all. I'm like, well, you're building it for yourself. You work so hard your whole life, and then you have this thing that you're doing for yourself. But the way he operates in the world is that ultimately everything he's doing is for his children. It's for their love. But it just is so sad to me, because I imagine this is happening everywhere in the world right now. And really, all of the pain, all the suffering that's born from this, it's really just a misunderstanding amongst all parties. So like, if you do decide to become the bigger man, if your path is one that ultimately guides you to pursuing enlightenment or enlightened leadership, dear God, you are giving back to the world in a way that is fantastic, especially right now, man.
But your dad's the starting point.
Yeah, and my father is the starting point. It's absolutely.
I want to ask you something real quick. Sorry.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Name off 3 things. There's got, how old are you right now?
29. I turned 30 in 3 weeks.
Okay, just about 30 years old. So give me 3 things, one for every 10 years. There's got to be at least 3 of areas and things that you've done with your father, or there's something that you've done together, or some areas where he made you super happy.
He came to almost every one of my football games my entire life, all the way through senior year of college. He would come to, for a while it would make me angry. It's kind of weird, but he used to come to every practice. He would be there for everything, almost in a stalker degree.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Oh, that's good though. So I want you to write that down. Not right now, but like later on, you can write that down or memorize it.
Yeah.
Give me another.
He honestly, more than anyone in my family, would pull the music out of me, just because I wanted to make my dad happy so much growing up. Like, even being the boy who got to run him his Chinese food on Sundays was like a big deal, because you got to make that happy. But he would sit down and be like, "Jackie, will you play a song?" And he would recruit that out of me. You know, my mom never really did that, but
Yeah.
that was something cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
One more.
And then one more, he always has made sure that I wanted to go to a really good school. So I went to Amherst College, which is one of the top liberal arts schools in the country. I didn't go to his cherished Princeton, which bummed him out, but he's always cared so much about me and ultimately has wanted me to succeed. And in his eyes, that's going to the most elite academies.
Yeah. So when you, I want you to, because you know him, you know how he is.
Yeah.
I want you to tell him in your words, using these three things. You can use more. You can use, you know, I'm sure you can come up with a few more if you want. But as an example, tell him why he is the greatest of all time in your eyes. That's what that's what he lives for, and for him to hear it from his son or sons,
yeah.
I think that would really that's a good way to open that new chapter.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah,
with him.
Yeah,
and you know, of course, and then you can hit him with some of the stuff. Just be like, hey, but you know, I want you to be the greatest of all times for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But these little areas, you know, you can make it fun, but because he is such a, you know, I don't know him, but I'm gonna call him a hard ass. Like, he's just like,
you're right.
Right. So, but that's how you're gonna build that for yourself.
Yeah, 100. I appreciate that so much, and even Gina, how you're helping me with saying things like, just helping me take another step back, because ultimately, I'd say 2 years ago, I was ready to come home and be the space of enlightenment around my father, to change things. I was ready, but I came home, and just being around his energy, I got pulled right back to my past self, right back to it.
A little technique, okay, really helpful. Before you go, imagine yourself in a big bubble. It's made of the sort of stuff that riot police use, so you can see through it.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to send out, you have absolute total control over sending it out. So words, sending, and this is about creating a space that is filled with unconditional love.
Yeah.
So part of this is about you forgiving him. You recognize why he is as he is.
Yeah.
It's pretty evident that he loves you, and he loves you in the only way that he knows how.
Yes.
All right. It's not that his motive is bad, but it is his application of that motive that
Nailed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with this bubble, imagine anything you want to can go out, but you choose whether or not it's like an egg being thrown at a riot shield and it just slips off, or whether you're going to let it in.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
Every time you have a shower off any of the negative energy, let it go down the plug into the ground, and allow new, vibrant, positive energy to be showering in, and internalize that.
Yeah.
Every time you go to the loo, get rid of any, and I'm going to be unladylike, any crap which does not actually serve your best needs.
Get it
and
out.
Usually that makes you smile, okay? Because a lot of this is about finding the humor, lighten it up.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's such a good reminder.
And don't go with expectations that he will suddenly have a road to Damascus transformation. Have no emotional
connection or attachment
to the outcome. Because in the first instance, this is a gift you're giving yourself. Yeah. Out of it will come his healing if you choose to take it.
Man.
But make no mistake, this actually is for you. Because if you're going to go out in the world as a truly enlightened leader, all right, this stuff has got to go.
Yeah, so true. It's so true. But honestly, ultimately, that's what I want anyway.
Yeah.
I can't.
We understand that.
I know you guys. Yeah, I know you guys understand. It's like really the greatest takeaway for me is the insight that for the most of my life, I thought that when I saw someone suffering, in order to most optimally bring them a better life, I had to change them. That's how I thought reality worked. And, you know, sometimes that is the case. If you see someone who just is bleeding out on the side of the road, you go physically help, you know,
That's a practicality, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But for the most part, it's the same as when you're on an airplane that's going down and you have to put the thing on you first to get oxygen. You have to save yourself and find that truth within you, because it totally it changes the way that you perceive what's going on out here. And then you stop bringing that old energy back in. And you guys have helped me see that today. And I really, really needed to say that. And I'm ready to see that, I will say.
Brilliant.